They thought my silence was weakness, thought a signature could erase me from existence. But what they didn't know, beneath that polished corporate veneer, every bit of data, every server, every heartbeat of their precious system still belonged to me, and all I needed was one button. One single button. They called my silence cheap. Tonight, that silence would cost them everything they'd built on the bones of what I created. My name is Hannah Keller, and I built empires from code. For 12 years. I architected the digital skeleton that held stratoscale dynamics upright every server configuration, every failsafe, every redundancy that kept their billion-dollar machine breathing. Today, at 38. I sat in a glass conference room watching my replacement slide a document across the mahogany table, like he was dealing cards in a rigged game. Tyler Bishop, 32 years old with a Harvard MBA and a smile that never reached his eyes. He'd been CEO for exactly 43 days, brought in by the board to modernize and streamline after the acquisition. His baby face fooled investors, but I saw the predator beneath the kind who dismantled companies like stripping copper from abandoned buildings. "We've acquired your company," he said, his manicured fingers drumming against the table. "And your silence." He paused, letting the words hang in the recycled air. Both were remarkably affordable. The insult hit like ice water. Remarkably affordable. My life's work. The infrastructure I'd built with my bare hands through countless debugging sessions and weekend emergencies reduced to a line item on some spreadsheet. The NDA sat between us, thick with legalese, demanding my signature and my disappearance. I kept my face neutral, a skill perfected through years of boardroom warfare. Inside, something darker stirred. Not rage was too hot, too immediate. This was colder, more patient, the kind of feeling that could wait. "The terms are generous," Tyler continued, misreading my silence. 6 months severance, continued health coverage through year-end. All we need is your signature and your commitment to a smooth transition. Smooth transition, as if they had any idea what they were transitioning to. The new CTO they'd brought in, some Silicon Valley wonder kid named Marcus, had spent the last month promising to rebuild everything from scratch. No more legacy systems. He'd proclaimed in the all-hands meeting I wasn't supposed to attend but watched through a leaked Zoom link. "We're going full cloud native, Kubernetes, microservices. The old infrastructure dies with the old guard." The old guard. That's what I'd become at 38. I picked up the pen, felt its weight. German-made. Probably cost more than most people's car payments. The kind of pen executives use to sign away other people's futures. Tyler leaned back in his chair, already dismissing me, his phone buzzing with what I'm sure he considered more important matters. That's when I remembered something, a ghost from the past, buried in thousands of pages of contracts nobody read anymore. 12 years ago, when Stratoscale was just 15 people in a converted warehouse, I'd insisted on a peculiar clause in the infrastructure hosting agreement. The founding CTO had laughed, called it paranoid. Ghost clause. He'd named it, thinking it would never matter. The clause was simple. Any change in executive leadership required unanimous consent from all original signatories to maintain auto-renewal of hosting rights. Without that consent, the agreement would need manual renewal within 90 days, or all infrastructure ownership would revert to the original architect. I signed the NDA with a flourish, my signature as meaningless as Tyler believed I was. He didn't know that buried in Section 47B of a contract from 2013 gathering digital dust in some forgotten SharePoint folder was a ticking time bomb. They had 90 days from his appointment to get my consent for renewal. They had 3 days left. "Pleasure doing business," Tyler said, already standing, already moving on to his next meeting, his next conquest. The dismissal was clear. I was yesterday's news, a footnote in Stratoscale's glorious future. I gathered my things slowly, deliberately, my laptop, my notebook, the stupid succulent from my desk they'd boxed up and brought to this final humiliation. At the door, I turned back. "Tyler," I said. He barely glanced up from his phone. You might want to have legal review the old hosting agreements, Section 47B specifically. He waved me off. Legal's already cleared everything. Doors that way. I smiled then. Not the bitter smile of defeat, but something else entirely. The smile of someone who knows the building's foundations are made of sand, and the tide is coming in. 3 days. They had 3 days to realize their entire kingdom sat on land I still owned, and I was done renewing leases for people who thought I came cheap. That night, I sat in my home office with a glass of Malbec and 12 years of digital archaeology spread across 3 monitors. The apartment was quiet, except for the hum of servers I still maintained in the closet, old habits from when Stratoscale's infrastructure lived in my garage before we could afford data centers. I pulled up the folder I hadn't touched in years. Legacy Contracts 2012 to 2014 inches. Nested inside were hundreds of documents, most of them superseded by newer agreements, corporate acquisitions, and the kind of legal evolution that happens when a startup becomes a corporation. But some things, I knew, had been forgotten in the rush to grow. There it was. Hosting Agreement V1.3b, dated March 15, 2013. 37 pages of technical specifications and legal framework that nobody had bothered to review because why would they? The infrastructure just worked. It had always worked. I'd made sure of that. I scrolled to page 31, section 47B, and there it was, in beautiful, legally binding black and white. Any change in executive leadership defined as C-suite positions, including but not limited to CEO, CTO, CFO requires written consent from all original signatory parties within 90 days of said change. Failure to obtain unanimous consent will result in manual renewal requirement. Failure to manually renew within the specified timeframe will result in immediate reversion of all infrastructure ownership, including but not limited to domain names, SSL certificates, database ownership, API keys, and cloud service accounts to the original architect as specified in Appendix J. I was the original architect. Appendix J had my name on every single line. My phone buzzed. Sarah Martinez, one of the senior engineers who'd survived the recent purges, texted, "Heard about today. That's fucked up. You okay?" I typed back, "Better than okay. Question: has Marcus migrated anything off the legacy infrastructure yet?" 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. LMAO, no. He's been in planning meetings for 6 weeks. Says the migration starts after the next G launch. Wants a clean marketing win first. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. I opened another terminal window and logged into the administrative portal. My credentials still worked, of course they did. I'd built the authentication system, and apparently, Marcus's team hadn't bothered to audit access logs. Why would they? I was gone. Signed away. NDA'd into oblivion. The dashboard bloomed before me like a map of a kingdom I still secretly ruled. 15,000 active servers, 342 databases, 78 API endpoints handling 2 million requests per minute, all registered under HK Infrastructure LLC, the company I'd created before Stratoscale acquired my services. Never the company itself. They'd bought my silence and my code. They'd never bought my infrastructure. I pulled up the domain registrar. Every single domain Stratoscale, Stratoscale.io, their entire API subdomain constellation all registered to my LLC with me as the sole authorized administrator. The SSL certificates issued to my infrastructure company, the AWS accounts billing to my corporate credit card, which Stratoscale had been reimbursing through an automated payment system nobody had thought to question. I opened the calendar. Tyler had been appointed CEO on January 3rd. 90 days would be April 3rd. I looked at the date on my screen, March 31st. They had until midnight on April 3rd to get my written consent. The beautiful irony was that I'd warned Tyler, Section 47B specifically, but he'd been too arrogant, too certain that legal had everything handled. Legal probably did have everything handled from the past 5 years. Nobody looked at 12-year-old contracts for systems that never failed. I pulled up the NextG launch page. April 7th, 2 p.m. Pacific. Live from Seattle Convention Center. The future of cloud infrastructure begins now. 4 days after the hosting agreement expired. I drafted an email to my personal lawyer, attached the contract, and highlighted the relevant sections. Her response came back in 30 minutes. Holy shit, Hannah, this is ironclad. They don't own any of it. You could pull the plug on April 4th at 12:01 a.m., and they couldn't do a damn thing. I deleted the email thread, cleared my cache, and opened a new notebook. At the top of the first page, I wrote, "The price of silence." Below it, I started a countdown. 3 days, 11 hours, 43 minutes. They thought they'd bought my silence cheap. They were about to learn that silence was just the calm before the storm. And storms don't come with price tags, they come with casualties. The knife hidden in the shadows wasn't made of steel, it was made of root access, authentication tokens, and 12 years of undocumented dependencies that I carried in my head like a blueprint to a fortress only I could navigate. 2:30 a.m. April 1st. I couldn't sleep. Instead, I sat in the blue glow of my monitors, mapping the empire I'd built like a general reviewing battle plans, every service, every dependency, every single point of failure that I'd spent years eliminating. Now they would all become weapons. I started with reconnaissance. The admin portal showed me everything: real-time traffic, system health, active sessions. Stratoscale was humming along at peak efficiency. The dashboard showed 99.999% uptime for the last quarter. My architecture, still unbreakable even in hostile hands. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd built it too well. DNS Management Console, 68 active domains, all pointing to load balancers I controlled. SSL Certificate Dashboard, 43 certificates, all set to auto-renew through my LLC's account. Database replication status, primary-secondary pairs synchronized across 6 data centers. Master credentials unchanged since 2019. API Gateway 78 endpoints. Authentication managed through a custom OAuth implementation I'd written during a particularly inspired 72-hour coding marathon in 2015. But the real beauty was in the billing dashboard. For 12 years, Stratoscale had been automatically reimbursing my infrastructure company for hosting costs nearly $3 million annually that flowed in and out so smoothly their accounting department probably classified it as utilities. Just another operational expense that nobody questioned because the lights never went off. My phone buzzed. Another text from Sarah. Weird thing. Marcus just sent an all-hands about the NextG launch. Says we're expecting 50K concurrent viewers for the live stream. Marketing's been pushing it hard. Even got TechCrunch to cover it. 50,000 witnesses. The number sent a thrill down my spine. I pulled up Stratoscale's marketing site, where a countdown timer ticked toward the NextG launch. Revolutionizing cloud infrastructure, the headline proclaimed. Below it, a quote from Tyler. We're not just upgrading our systems, we're demolishing the old and building something entirely new. No more legacy dependencies, no more technical debt. This is Stratoscale 2.0. Demolishing the old. The words tasted bitter even reading them. I navigated to the investor relations page. Their stock had climbed 18% since Tyler's appointment. The NextG launch was being positioned as the catalyst for a new growth phase. Every tech blog was calling it the most ambitious infrastructure overhaul in the industry. Another terminal window. I checked the email forwarding rules still active. Every system alert, every automated report, every single diagnostic message was being copied to my personal inbox. 12,000 emails a day that I'd been filtering into folders, watching, waiting. The past week had been particularly interesting. Certificate renewal warnings, domain expiration notices, billing confirmations, all sent to an old operations email that forwarded to me and, apparently, nowhere else. I composed a test. From the admin console, I temporarily suspended one minor API endpoint for exactly 3 seconds at 2:47 SIM. The alerts exploded instantly, monitoring systems, automated calls to on-call engineers, Slack channels lighting up with warnings, Within 40 seconds, the endpoint was back online, and within 90 seconds, Marcus himself was in the emergency channel demanding answers. "Probably just a network hiccup," someone responded. "Everything's green now." They had no idea I was holding the kill switch to every single green light on their board. I restored everything and cleared the logs of my access. Not that anyone was looking. Their security team was too busy preparing for the launch, making sure the live stream infrastructure could handle the load. They were protecting against DDoS attacks, hackers, corporate espionage. They never imagined the threat was already inside, had always been inside, because I wasn't just in their system, I was their system. 3 more days. I opened a new document and started typing. Migration checklist for April 4th, 12:01. 1. Update DNS name servers to null 2. Revoke all SSL certificates 3. Disable API gateway authentication 4. Terminate database replication 5. Suspend all cloud services 6. Update domain registrar lock 7. Cancel all auto-renewal schedules 8. Archive all system backups to cold storage. Each line was perfectly legal. I wouldn't be destroying anything, just reclaiming what was mine. The fact that Stratascale had built their entire future on infrastructure they didn't actually own, that was their oversight, not my problem. The beautiful, terrible truth was that I didn't need to hack anything. I didn't need to break in. I was already inside, had always been inside, because they'd never actually kicked me out. They'd just assumed that signatures and severance checks were enough to transfer ownership of something that was never for sale. The knife in the shadows wasn't hidden at all. It was hanging in plain sight, in a 37-page contract that nobody had bothered to read, wielded by the architect who'd built the very ground they stood on. And in 3 days, I was going to pull it out from under them, 7 days before the event, and the countdown consumed everything. I'd stopped sleeping normally, living instead in 3-hour intervals between checking systems, monitoring communications, and watching Stratascale build their house of cards higher and higher. The sticky note on my monitor read, 7 inches in thick black marker. Tomorrow it would be 6, the day after, 5, each number a step closer to the moment when gravity would remember its job. My phone pinged. Sarah again. But this time she wasn't alone in the group chat. 5 other engineers from the old guard, the ones who remembered when Stratascale ran on pizza and impossible deadlines instead of venture capital and corporate buzzwords. "Anyone else notice Tyler's been promising the moon in these interviews?" Sarah wrote. "Just saw him on Bloomberg." Direct quote. "Our infrastructure is so robust, we could lose half our data centers and customers wouldn't notice a blip." Another engineer, Raj, responded, "Marcus showed the new architecture diagram yesterday. It's all theoretical. Every single box in that diagram is still running on Hannah's old setup. They didn't know I was watching, had added me to the chat before my departure was official. I'd muted notifications but read everything." "Speaking of Hannah," someone typed, "legal's been asking about some old contracts. Devin from IT said they're looking for something from 2013. My pulse quickened. Had they finally noticed? Probably just due diligence for the launch. Sarah responded, "You know how they get before big events. Crossing T's and dotting I's they should have handled months ago." 6 days out. The sticky note changed. Marketing had started their final push-sponsored posts on every tech platform, a Times Square billboard announcement, even a goddamn Super Bowl commercial teaser. "The future has a new foundation," it proclaimed, while showing the old Stratascale logo crumbling into dust before reforming as something sleeker, sharper, newer. I pulled up the investor call transcript from that morning. Tyler's voice, transcribed in corporate sans serif. "We're not just launching a product next week. We're launching a philosophy. The old Stratascale was built on aging infrastructure, held together by legacy code and outdated thinking. NextG represents a clean break from all of that technical debt. Technical debt, my code, which had maintained 99.999% uptime for 12 years, was technical debt. 5 days, my lawyer called. "Hannah, I need to confirm you haven't done anything to sabotage their systems." correct? Define sabotage. Anything that could be construed as harmful action, malicious code, deleted files, unauthorized access after your termination. I haven't touched anything, I said, which was true. I haven't deleted, modified, or damaged any of their systems. And the contract expiration is a matter of their negligence, not my action. I even warned Tyler to check Section 47B. She paused. You warned him. In front of witnesses, on my last day, he dismissed it. Christ, document everything. Hannah, every interaction, every communication. This is going to be biblical. 4 days. The sticky note felt heavier. Local tech news started camping outside Stratoscale's headquarters, filming B-roll for their launch coverage. The stock price hit an all-time high. Tyler did a victory lap podcast tour, 5 shows in 1 day, each time getting bolder with his claims. We've eliminated every single point of failure, he told the host of Tech Disrupt Live. Our new CTO, Marcus Winters, has rebuilt everything from the ground up. We're talking about infrastructure so advanced, so resilient, that we're offering an unprecedented 100% uptime SLA. Marcus, who hadn't migrated a single service off my infrastructure. Marcus, who was promising perfection built on systems he didn't own. 3 days, the final sticky note before the end, an email forwarded to my personal account, a system alert I'd configured years ago for contract renewals. Subject, Urgent Hosting Agreement, HC 2013-47B, expires in 72 hours. It had gone to 3 email addresses, operations at Stratoscale, which forwarded to me, legal contracts at Stratoscale, which apparently nobody monitored, and Hannah, Keller at Stratoscale, which no longer existed. I checked the legal contracts inbox through a backup access I'd maintained. 17,000 unread emails. The warning was buried in an avalanche of spam and automated notices nobody had looked at in years. 2 days, 48 hours. My phone rang at 11:53 p.m. Hannah. It was Devin from IT, one of the few people who understood how deep the infrastructure really went. I'm not supposed to be calling you, but something's weird. I was doing a routine audit and found references to your old LLC in the domain registry. Is that normal? I kept my voice steady. Devin, I haven't worked there for 2 weeks. You should talk to Marcus. Marcus doesn't know shit about the actual infrastructure. He's been in architecture meetings drawing boxes on whiteboards while the real systems. Hannah, what's Section 47B? Check the contract yourself. Devin, it's all there in black and white. Hannah, I can't help you. I signed an NDA. Remember? But maybe someone should have read the contracts before they decided my silence was cheap. I hung up. 1 day. 19 hours. 7 minutes. The countdown wasn't just in my head anymore. It was in my blood, my bones, every breath ticking toward the moment when their kingdom would realize it was built on rented land, and the lease was about to expire. The Seattle Convention Center gleamed under perfect April sunshine, its glass facade reflecting the tech elite gathering for Stratoscale's moment of triumph. I watched from a coffee shop across the street. My laptop opened to 16 different monitoring dashboards, each one showing the heartbeat of systems about to flatline. 2 p.m. Pacific, T-0. The live stream started with swooping drone shots of the venue, cutting to the packed auditorium where 2,000 industry leaders, investors, and journalists waited. The online viewer count climbed 10,000, 20,000, 35,000. The chat scrolled too fast to read, a blur of excitement and emoji. Tyler walked onto the stage to thunderous applause, his navy suit immaculate, his confidence radiating like heat from a forge. Behind him, a massive LED wall displayed the NextG logo clean, minimal, expensive. Ladies and gentlemen, his voice boomed through the sound system. Today we don't just unveil a product. Today we bury the past and birth the future. I checked the time. 2:03 p.m. The hosting agreement had expired 62 hours ago. My infrastructure company now owned everything, and Stratoscale was running on borrowed time, my borrowed time. For too long. Tyler continued, "We've been held back by legacy systems, outdated architecture, and the technical debt of previous generations. But no more. Our new CTO, Marcus Winters, has rebuilt everything, every single component." The camera cut to Marcus in the front row, nodding with the satisfied smile of someone who believed his own lies. "In fact," Tyler said, his voice dropping to a dramatic whisper that the microphone still caught, "our infrastructure is so robust, so revolutionary, that we're making an unprecedented promise: 100% uptime, guaranteed, or your money back." The audience gasped. The livestream chat exploded. The stock price ticker on my second monitor jumped 2% in 30 seconds. That's when I opened the terminal I'd been keeping ready for 62 hours. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, each command loaded and waiting. I wasn't destroying anything. I was simply reclaiming what was mine. First command: DNS name server update, execute. The effect wasn't immediate DNS propagation, never is. But I knew that somewhere, the first dominoes were starting to wobble. Tyler was in the middle of explaining their new Kubernetes architecture when the first phone buzzed, not his Marcus's. The CTO glanced at his screen, frowned, but stayed seated, professional, composed. Second command: SSL certificate revocation, execute. Our clients include 40% of the Fortune 500 inches, Tyler announced. As another phone buzzed, then another. They trust us because we've built something unbreakable. The first visible crack appeared on the LED wall behind him. The NextG demo site, which was supposed to be displaying real-time metrics, showed a browser security warning instead: "Your connection is not private." Tyler didn't notice he was facing the audience, but the livestream viewers saw it. The chat shifted from excitement to confusion. "Is anyone else getting an error?" "Site's down for me." "LMAO, did they just crash during their own launch?" Third command: API. Gateway authentication disable, execute. Marcus stood up, his phone pressed to his ear, his face draining of color. He started pushing through the row of seats, headed for the side exit. The cameras caught it all. Tyler, still oblivious, clicked his presentation remote. The next slide was supposed to show a live dashboard of their system health. Instead, it showed a 502 bad gateway error. "Technical difficulties." He laughed, but sweat was already beading on his forehead. "That's the thing about live demos, right?" His phone rang. He ignored it. It rang again, and again. Fourth command: database, replication terminate, execute. The murmur from the audience grew louder. Half of them had their phones out, presumably trying to access Stratascale services. The other half were filming Tyler's slow-motion meltdown. "If we could just," Tyler started, but his mic cut out. The entire AV system, which ran through Stratascale's cloud infrastructure, had just lost its backend. The livestream was still running, though. That was hosted separately. 53,000 viewers were now watching Tyler standing silent on stage, his mouth moving without sound, as behind him the LED wall displayed nothing but error messages cascading like a waterfall of failure. Someone from the tech crew ran on stage with a wired microphone. Tyler grabbed it desperately. "We're experiencing," his voice cracked. "We're looking into some technical." That's when the lights went out. Not the actual lights. Those were on building power, but every screen, every display, every digital surface in the convention center that was connected to Stratascale's infrastructure went dark simultaneously. In the darkness, 53,000 livestream viewers could hear Tyler's amplified breathing, rapid and shallow, the sound of a man watching his empire collapse in real time. Someone in the audience laughed, nervous, disbelieving, then another, then dozens. The lights came back on to chaos. Tyler stood frozen at the podium, his phone in one hand, the mic in the other, his face the pale mask of a man who just realized the ground beneath his feet had never been solid. A reporter in the third row stood up. "Mr. Bishop, are you saying that during your launch event for NextG, your entire infrastructure has failed?" Tyler's mouth opened, closed, opened again, No words came. The clip would go viral within the hour. The memes would follow within 2. By market close, Stratoscale's stock would lose 43% of its value. But in that moment, in that beautiful, terrible moment of absolute system failure, all I could think about was Tyler's words from 2 weeks ago. "We bought your silence, and it was remarkably affordable." I closed my laptop and raised my coffee cup in a silent toast to the convention center across the street, where 2,000 witnesses were tweeting, posting, and live streaming the most spectacular infrastructure failure in tech history. My silence had been expensive after all. They just hadn't realized they were the ones paying for it. The dominoes fell faster than gravity could account for. Within minutes of the convention center meltdown, the digital universe turned Stratoscale into carrion for the vultures of social media to feast upon. #NextGdown. Trending #1 worldwide within 17 minutes. #Stratoscale. Fail climbing at 30,000 tweets per minute. #100% uptime. My ass already had its own merchandise. I sat in my apartment, 6 monitors now displaying the beautiful chaos. Twitter on screen 1, LinkedIn on screen 2, Reddit exploding on screen 3. TechCrunch had already pushed out a breaking news alert. Stratoscale's NextG launch catastrophically fails during live demo. My phone vibrated constantly. I'd turned off the ringer after the 40th call. The emails came in waves, legal threats, pleading messages, offers to negotiate. I responded to none of them. 4:23 p.m. The emergency board meeting would be starting right about now. I pulled up the investor Discord that someone had leaked access to months ago. Pure pandemonium. Who the fuck approved this launch without checking infrastructure? Marcus said everything was migrated. Marcus fucking said, stock down 43% and falling. Class action lawsuit incoming. My firm's already fielding calls. 4:31 p.m. Tyler's assistant, former assistant now, probably leaked the internal Slack. Screenshots flooded Twitter within seconds. The conversation was a masterpiece of corporate panic. Tyler, get me Marcus now. Marcus, the infrastructure just vanished. Everything's returning null. CTO team, sir, we don't own the domains anymore. Tyler, what do you mean we don't own them? Legal. Checking the contracts. There's something about a 90-day renewal clause. Tyler, 90 days ago I wasn't even CEO. The realization hitting them in real time, documented forever in screenshots that would become Silicon Valley legend. 5:45 p.m. CNN Business picked up the story. The reporter stood outside Stratoscale headquarters where employees were evacuating not because of any danger, but because without infrastructure, there was literally nothing they could do. No email, no internal tools, no access to any systems. In what industry experts are calling the most catastrophic infrastructure failure in tech history, the reporter said, Stratoscale has lost access to its entire digital presence. Sources inside the company suggest this may be related to an expired contract that nobody renewed. My lawyer called. This time I answered. Hannah, they're offering $10 million.
No.
$20 million.
No.
They're desperate. The board is demanding Tyler's resignation. Marcus has already been terminated. They need those systems back online or the company dies. Then the company dies. Hannah. They bought my silence. Remember, I'm being very, very silent. 6:15 p.m. Someone leaked Tyler's termination letter to Business Insider. Effective immediately. No severance. Potential personal liability for gross negligence. The board was in full damage control mode, throwing bodies under buses that were already on fire. Reddit had started a countdown clock hours since Stratoscale had Infrastructure 4. The memes were glorious. Tyler's frozen face from the live stream, captioned, "When you realize the infrastructure you bragged about deleting still owns you." Marcus's panicked exit turned into a GIF with abandoned ship flashing in impact font. 7:22 p.m. The Wall Street Journal published an in-depth piece that must have been in the works for hours. How Stratoscale's revolutionary launch became a case study in corporate hubris. They'd found it. Buried in the reporting was a single paragraph that made my heart sing. Sources familiar with the matter indicate that the infrastructure failure stems from an expired hosting agreement dating back to 2013. The contract, which required renewal consent from all original parties, was allegedly allowed to lapse, resulting in the automatic reversion of all infrastructure ownership to the original architect, Hannah Keller, who left the company 2 weeks ago under contested circumstances. My phone rang. Unknown number, I answered. Miss Keller. The voice was older, tired. This is Richard Stone, chairman of Stratoscale's board. Mr. Stone. I'm calling to personally apologize for how you were treated. Tyler Bishop acted without board approval in his handling of your departure. I said nothing. We'd like to discuss purchasing the infrastructure rights back. Name your price. Mr. Stone, with all due respect, I don't have a price. I have terms. Which are? Public apology, front page of the Wall Street Journal, full admission of what happened, Tyler's entire severance package redirected to a Women in Tech Scholarship Fund, and my team, the engineers Tyler fired, reinstated with full back pay and a 20% raise. Silence. Then, and the infrastructure. $50 million, cash, plus ongoing royalties of 15% of gross revenue for any systems built on my architecture for the next 10 years. That would be hundreds of millions. Yes, or you can try to rebuild from scratch. How's that working out for you? 8:45 p.m. Sam. #Stratoscale. Down had become the #1 trending topic globally. Someone had started a drinking game, take a shot every time a new company announced they were switching away from Stratoscale services. Emergency rooms in the Bay Area reported an uptick in alcohol poisoning cases. By 9 p.m., the documentary crews were already reaching out for interviews. The business schools were preparing case studies. The internet had turned Stratoscale into a verb, to stratoscale vive, to fail so spectacularly that your disaster becomes the standard by which all other disasters are measured. And through it all, I maintained my silence, the expensive kind, the kind that costs everything. The collapse being live-streamed wasn't just a technical failure, it was performance art, a public execution where the condemned had built their own gallows and broadcast their own demise in 4K resolution. 10:07 p.m. Someone had isolated the exact moment Tyler realized his empire was built on sand. A 23-second clip, viewed 18 million times and counting. His face transitioning through the 5 stages of grief in real-time denial as he clicked the remote, anger as the errors cascaded, bargaining as he grabbed the backup microphone, depression as the lights went out, and finally, that beautiful, terrible acceptance as he stood silent before 2,000 witnesses. The live stream had never stopped, even after Stratoscale's infrastructure collapsed. The streaming service hosted on a third-party platform kept broadcasting. For 3 hours and 14 minutes, it captured everything: the chaos, the exodus of executives, the journalists circling like sharks, and finally, an empty stage with the abandoned podium, the NextG logo still visible but flickering, corrupted, dying 1 pixel at a time. Bloomberg had set up a special ticker Strat -67.3%. Trading had been halted twice. The SEC announced an investigation into potential disclosure failures regarding critical infrastructure dependencies. 11:32 p.m. A journalist from The Verge had done the math. Every minute of downtime is costing Stratoscale approximately $400,000 in lost revenue, SLA penalties, and client defections. Current downtime 9 hours 32 minutes. Estimated losses $228 million and climbing. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Watching the board meeting through the glass conference room, Richard Stone just threw his laptop. Actually threw it. It's beautiful. The Reddit live thread had become the internet's gathering place for the disaster. Someone was updating every 30 seconds. 11:45 p.m. Microsoft announces emergency migration services for fleeing Stratoscale customers. 11:47 p.m. Amazon AWS just posted a job listing for infrastructure architects with experience in disaster recovery. 11:51 p.m. Tyler Bishop's LinkedIn shows looking for new opportunities. 11:52 p.m. Tyler Bishop's LinkedIn has been deleted. Midnight, 10 hours since the collapse. The memes had evolved into their third generation. Someone had set Tyler's freeze frame to Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. Another had created a cryptocurrency called Failcoin with Tyler's face as the logo. It was somehow up 400%. But the masterpiece was a side-by-side comparison video on the left. Tyler's Bloomberg interview from the morning, promising infrastructure so robust we could lose half our data centers and customers wouldn't notice. On the right, the live stream of him standing speechless as everything burned. The video was titled, Aged Like Milk, the Speedrun Edition. 12:43 a. An investigative reporter had found the smoking gun a screenshot of the email system showing the contract renewal warning sitting unread in the legal contracts inbox. The timestamp showed it had been delivered 3 days before expiration. The subject line, in damning clarity, Urgent Infrastructure Agreement expires in 72 hours. The replies came fast and brutal. This is criminal negligence. How does a billion-dollar company not have someone checking critical contracts? Tyler Bishop spent more on his launch party catering than on due diligence. 1:15 a.m. The Wall Street Journal updated their online edition with a new headline, The 14-Hour Collapse, How Stratoscale Became the Worst Tech Disaster in History. 14 hours. That's all it had taken. 14 hours from Tyler standing proud on that stage to the complete annihilation of everything he'd claimed to have built. Someone leaked the final board meeting recording at 2:23 a.m. The audio was poor quality, clearly recorded on a phone, but Tyler's voice was unmistakable. She warned me. She literally told me to check Section 47B and I told her legal had cleared everything. Richard Stone's response was ice. You destroyed a $2 billion company because you couldn't be bothered to read a contract. You spent 6 weeks planning party logistics while our entire infrastructure was on a timer you never noticed. Marcus said. Marcus never owned anything, neither did you. You were renters playing with someone else's property, and you forgot to pay the fucking rent. 3:30 a.m. The death toll was final. 43 major enterprise clients had formally terminated their contracts. Stock price down 78% from the morning's high. Market cap evaporated $1.8 billion. Gone. The SEC had expanded their investigation. 3 class action lawsuits had been filed. And through it all, the live stream link remained active, showing that empty stage. Someone in the comments had started a vigil, posting every hour 13 of Stratoscale having no infrastructure, hour 14 inches, hour 15. At 4 a.m., exhausted from watching the beautiful disaster I'd orchestrated, I opened Twitter one last time. Tyler had posted from a new account, his first and only message since the collapse. I was wrong. 2 words. No excuse, no deflection, no corporate speak. Just the admission that he'd dismissed as worthless the person who'd held his kingdom in her hands all along. I considered responding. Something clever. Something cutting. But no, my silence had already said everything. It had cost him everything. The live stream would be archived forever. A monument to what happens when you mistake silence for weakness. When you assume the architect has left the building just because she's no longer sitting at the table. The sun was rising over Seattle, painting the sky the color of error messages and warning signs ignored too long. Somewhere, Tyler Bishop was watching the same sunrise, finally understanding that some things can't be bought cheap, that silence isn't golden, it's explosive, waiting for the right moment to detonate. The live stream comment count crossed 1 million. The final message before the stream finally died. This is what happens when you build your castle on someone else's land and forget to ask permission to stay. The expensive silence had bought me everything, and I savored it from my balcony, a glass of Chateau Margaux in hand, watching the city lights flicker like the server status indicators that no longer concerned me. 3 weeks had passed since the collapse. The internet had moved on to fresher disasters, but Stratascale remained a cautionary tale whispered in boardrooms and business schools. The company had accepted my terms, all of them. The $50 million had been wired within 72 hours. The Wall Street Journal ran my demanded apology across their front page, a statement of responsibility and regret. How corporate arrogance destroyed Stratascale. Tyler's severance, all $8 million of it, had been redirected to the Grace Hopper Women in Technology Foundation. The photo of him handing over the ceremonial check, his face a mask of forced composure, became my laptop wallpaper. My team had been reinstated. Sarah was now CTO, with a mandate to rebuild everything from scratch. The others got their 20% raises and then some. They'd offered me the CEO position, but I declined. I had no interest in ruling the kingdom I'd conquered. The destruction had been the point, not the reconstruction. I'd kept one thing from the ruins, a framed screenshot of that moment. That perfect moment when Tyler stood frozen on stage, mouth open, future evaporating. It hung in my home office, a reminder that power isn't about what you build, it's about understanding what you truly own. The media requests had finally stopped. The documentary crews had gotten their footage. The Harvard Business Review had published their case study. The $100 million silence, a study in contractual negligence and corporate hubris. It would be required reading in MBA programs for decades. But the sweetest victory had come in the smallest form, a handwritten note, delivered by courier, on Tyler's personal stationery. You were right. Your silence wasn't cheap. It was priceless. I just couldn't afford it. Tiombi. I'd burned the note, watched the expensive paper curl and blacken, the words disappearing into ash and smoke. Some messages don't need to be kept. They've already served their purpose. 9:45 p.m. on a Thursday, 3 weeks after the fall of an empire. My phone buzzed with a LinkedIn notification. Marcus Winters had updated his profile. Former CTO at Stratascale, seeking new opportunities. Lessons learned, always read the contracts, always respect the architects, never assume silence means surrender. At least one of them had learned something. I closed my laptop for the last time on this chapter. Tomorrow, I'd start something new. Another company, another architecture, another foundation that only I would truly understand. But I'd learned something too. Never let them buy your silence without reading the fine print. Because silence, real silence, the kind that watches and waits and knows exactly when to break that silence, comes with compound interest. The city below hummed with the electricity of 10 million dreams and disasters in progress. Somewhere out there, another CEO was probably dismissing another architect, assuming another contract was just paperwork, making another fatal assumption about the price of silence. I raised my glass to them, to all of them, to every corporate titan who thinks the foundation doesn't matter once the skyscraper is built. Your kingdom stands on rented land. I whispered to the night. And someone, somewhere, is always holding the deed. The truth is, they'd been right about one thing: they had bought my silence. They just hadn't read the fine print. My silence came with an expiration date, a termination clause, and the kind of interest rate that compounds in catastrophe. They called my silence cheap. They were wrong. My silence had been free for 90 days. After that, it had cost them everything: $2 billion in market value, 43 enterprise clients, 3 executive careers, and 1 live-streamed humiliation that would outlive us all. I took a final sip of wine, aged 18 years, which seemed poetic. That's how long it had taken me to learn the most valuable lesson in corporate warfare: the person who builds the foundation controls the earthquake. And when they least expect it, when they're standing proud on stages making promises about futures they don't own, when they've forgotten that every kingdom needs permission to exist, that's when you pull the ground out from under them. Not with noise, not with fury, but with silence, the expensive kind that echoes long after the collapse. that teaches lessons in the language of zeros disappearing from valuations, that writes its own legend in the ashes of arrogance. They'd wanted my silence. In the end, that's exactly what killed them. Thank you so much for listening to this story of corporate revenge and poetic justice. I'm curious, where are you listening to this tale of Silicon Valley's most spectacular downfall? Drop a comment below and let me know if you're commuting, working late, or perhaps plotting your own corporate revenge. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories of brilliant retribution and share your thoughts. Have you ever witnessed karma this perfect in your own workplace? Let's discuss in the comments below.